Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Even If Project Podcast. I'm Christina, and I'm so excited you guys are here with me today. I've got my coffee and my Bible open, and today we are going to be staying in our last chapter, John chapter 11. We're going to be looking at the same story, the same moment, nothing new fixed yet. We're going to be seeing the second half of this story. Lazarus is still dead. Mary and Martha are still grieving, and Jesus is nearby, but he hasn't stepped fully into anything yet. And I love this part of the story, not because it's easy, but because it's really honest. There's no rush here. There's no big explanation. It's just real people trying to make sense of a loss, and Jesus stands right there with them. So if you're listening to this and you don't feel confident or super put together today, good. Because that's exactly where this passage lives. And we're just going to slow down together, read this in chunks, and just talk through what's actually happening, like we always do. Not just what it means, but how it actually matters in real life. There's no pressure to have this figured out. We're just going to walk through it together. And as always, just a quick little reminder, I'm learning right alongside you. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a Bible expert. This is just my interpretation of what this means. I'm just someone who loves God and loves his word and just wants to keep growing and learning in it right here with you. So if I ever say something that doesn't sound right to you, or you don't think is correct, or you interpreted it a different way, because that can happen, please send me a message or leave a comment on this video. That way everybody can see it and see, they can put their input into that comment as well and see the conversation that happened off of it so they can figure out what they think from it. But either way, I will look into what you guys say, and we can just keep learning together and keep growing right here together. So let's go and get into the actual reading. And just a quick reminder of where we are before we actually read today, the scene that we're walking into from the past. Up to this point, nothing has been fixed yet. Lazarus got sick. Jesus didn't rush, and he died. Lazarus died, not Jesus. Mary and Martha sent for Jesus because they believed he could help, and he didn't show up when they thought he would. He said he was going to stay 2 more days at where he was at. If you don't remember that, you can go back to the last video and listen to it. I believe it was called When Jesus Waits. Or you can just read it and see it in the reading. Anyways, Martha already went out to meet Jesus, and that conversation between them mattered because Martha didn't come in hot with anger, but she didn't pretend she was fine in this situation either. She basically said, I know you have the power to stop this, and I'm devastated that you didn't. And Jesus didn't shut her down. He didn't correct her emotions. He didn't rush her grief. He didn't try to explain or have an excuse for what happened. He told her who he is, not a future solution, not a distant answer. I am the resurrection and the life. So right now we're standing in this weird in-between place. The loss is real. The pain is still there. Nothing has changed yet. Jesus is nearby, but he hasn't fully stepped into this grief. And that's where we're going to be picking up today. Not in a miracle, not in a resolution, but right before Jesus walks straight into the middle of it all. So let's go and start it off. We are going to be reading verses 28 through 32 in John 11. I am going to be reading from my CSB Bible. I have the She Reads Truth Bible. I have one nail that has a little bit of nail polish left on it, so it looks terrible. I had gel on my nails and I picked it all off, and now my nails are killing me, so they look terrible. I probably shouldn't show you guys that. They look hideous. But I have one nail that I can't get the gel off of, and it's probably for the best because there's probably a reason why it's still on there. But anyways, just to letting you guys know why it looks so terrible. I'm going to be reading from my CSB Bible. This is the She Reads Truth Bible. I really love it. I love how it goes into more descriptions and everything like that. I'm not sponsored by them whatsoever. But if you have a different version, it might sound a little bit different, but the meaning is still going to be the same, and that's totally okay. So, like I said, we're going to be starting on verses 28 through 32. It says, having said this, she went back and called her sister Mary, saying in private, the teacher is here and is calling for you. As soon as Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Jesus had not yet come into the village, but he was still in the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house consoling her saw that Mary got up quickly and went out. They followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to cry there. As soon as Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and told him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. So after Martha finishes talking with Jesus, she goes back into this house and quietly tells Mary, the teacher is here and he's calling for you. And that detail matters because she doesn't announce it to Mary. She doesn't make a scene from it. And she just tells Mary privately. And Mary gets up immediately and goes to him. Now, remember where Mary has been. She's sitting in a house full of people that are grieving this loss. People are crying, people are watching, people are trying to comfort her. So when she leaves quickly, everyone is assuming the same thing. They think she's going to the tomb to cry, because sometimes grief just needs space. But instead, Mary goes straight to Jesus. And when she sees him, she doesn't stand like Martha did. She falls at his feet. This isn't composed. This isn't measured. This is grief hitting all at once. And Mary says the exact same thing that Martha said. Lord, if you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Same sentence, same belief, same heartbreak. And Jesus doesn't interrupt her. He doesn't correct her wording or say that she's wrong or doesn't say, remember what I told Martha. He lets her say it. He lets her grieve. So for our first reflection question, what does it change for you to see that Jesus doesn't ask Mary to calm down or explain herself better? Because a lot of us feel pressure to approach God a certain way. We expect we need to be calmer or be more respectful or to sound more put together. But Mary isn't careful here, and Jesus stays. This moment reminds us that Jesus isn't listening for polished faith. He's listening to people. You don't have to soften your pain to be heard by him. So let's move on. We're going to be reading verses 33 through 37 next. That says, where am I at here? There we go. When Jesus saw her crying and the Jews who had come with her crying, he was deeply moved in his spirit and troubled. Where have you put him? He asked. Lord, they told him, come and see. Jesus wept. So the Jews said, see how he loved him? But some of them said, couldn't he who opened the blind man's eyes also have kept this man from dying? So when Jesus sees Mary crying here and sees these people that came with her thinking she was going to the tomb, they're all crying. John says Jesus is deeply moved and troubled. That phrase is so much stronger than it sounds because this isn't distant sympathy at all. This is emotional weight. And then we get the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. Jesus already knows what's coming. He already knows Lazarus will walk out of the tomb. And again, if you didn't listen to the last episode, I don't know why, but when I say his name, Lazarus, it sounds ridiculous to me. Like it sounds like, I know it's not a ridiculous name, but I feel like I say it weird. So if it sounds funny, I apologize. I know that I'm saying it correctly, but there's some words that I struggle with. So please just ignore them. Anyways, he knows that he's going to walk out of the tomb and he still cries. Jesus does, which tells us something very important. Jesus doesn't bypass pain just because he knows the ending. He enters into it. And the people watching respond in two ways. Some say, see how much he loved him. And others, if he could heal the blind man, why didn't he stop this from happening? Why didn't he save this man? So let's move on to our second reflection question. This one says, where have you felt pressure to be okay or move on even though something still hurts? So in real life, grief doesn't just show up at funerals, right? It shows up when you're expected to be fine because enough time has passed, or people stop asking how you're doing because they think you should be okay, but the pain still hasn't changed. You feel awkward by bringing something up again because you don't want to be a burden. But what this moment with Jesus shows us is that grief doesn't need to be managed before it's acknowledged. Jesus doesn't tell anyone to hold it together. He doesn't rush them forward. He doesn't say, this will make sense soon. He stays in the moment with them. So if you're carrying something that still hurts, even if life around you has moved on, this passage gives you the permission, even though you don't need it, it gives you that permission that you never needed to begin with, to name it without shame, not to fix it, just to be honest about it. So let's go ahead and continue. We're going to be reading verses 38 through 40. And it says, "Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. 'Remove the stone,' Jesus said. Martha, the dead man's sister, told him, 'Lord, there's already a stench because he has been there for 4 days.' Jesus said to her, 'Didn't I tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?'" So Jesus finally goes to this tomb. Now, before doing research on this passage, and I know it says here specifically, came to the tomb, it was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. I don't know why, but I used to picture like this stone casket, basically. Like I couldn't in my brain put this cave into perspective. I just could only think of stone. So I kept thinking of like, I don't know, the Egyptian times of like a stone. I don't even know if they use stone for Egyptian times, but this stone casket. And when Jesus says to move the stone, I kept picturing like Jesus is asking them to lift the top of this stone box. But that's not what it is. So if for any reason you have a weird brain like I do, it's not what is happening here. So I want to paint a picture here of what this actually is. And if you understood it right away too, I still want to paint this picture because I want you to actually imagine this scene. This is a cave carved into rock. And the stone isn't on top of it, it's rolled in front of the cave. So it's in front of this entrance. It's heavy, it's still in the entrance, and once it's closed, you are not meant to open it again. The stone isn't there for a ceremony. It's there to mark that this is final. This person is gone. So when Jesus says, remove the stone, he's not asking for something symbolic or small or an explanation. He's asking for them to reopen something that everyone has accepted has already been done. Something sealed, something uncomfortable, something they've emotionally moved on from because reopening it would be too much. Because by this point, Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. And that's why Martha reacts the way she does here. Lord, there's already a smell. It's been days. That's not her doubting Jesus. That's her being honest about reality. I mean, if somebody was dead in a cave, I wouldn't want to smell it personally. But she's basically saying, this is bad. This is past the point of being okay. This is uncomfortable. And Jesus doesn't shut her down here. He doesn't say, why are you being negative? He doesn't say you should trust me more. He doesn't say you don't want to see this guy again. He reminds her of something that they've already talked about, not to pressure her, but to anchor her. And then he still asks them to move the stone. So for our next reflection question, what's something you've been avoiding because opening it back up feels uncomfortable, awkward, or emotionally risky? And I just want to tell you guys too, because I usually tell you guys on every one, but if you are new to these episodes at all, I do put these questions in the show notes. And I also on our Instagram at the Even If Project, I have a link where you can click on it and I update that every week with the newest questions for the week, the reflection questions. So there are multiple ways for you to get these without having to quickly pause or write them all down or pause this video. Plus, you don't want to see my face when it's paused. But that way it's easier for you guys at the end, or if you guys wanted to go through them before and then come back to this, so you have more of a answer on your reflection questions, whichever way you want to do it, but they're already written down for you. So don't worry about having to quickly write these all down. But for the question, what's something you've been avoiding because opening it back up feels uncomfortable, awkward, or emotionally risky? So in real life, removing the stone usually looks small or uncomfortable. It could look like a conversation that you've been avoiding. It could be checking in on someone when you don't know what to say, or reopening something that you'd rather keep sealed. Martha doesn't pretend that it's fine, and she doesn't walk away either. This passage shows us that honesty and faith can exist together. Sometimes the bravest thing is saying, this is hard, but I'm still here. So let's move on. I think this is our last one, right? It was through 44. I have it written down that we were going to do 28 through 57 originally. And then when I was looking at it and doing all my research and stuff on this and diving further into it, I was like, 45 through 57, I feel like is a whole nother scene by itself. So I wanted to stop it early. So that's why this episode might be a little bit shorter. But anyways, I keep rambling in this episode. The next one is going to be 41 through 44. And it says, so they removed the stone. Then Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you heard me. I know that you always hear me, but because of the crowd standing here, I said this, so that they may believe you sent me. After he said this, he shouted with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out bound hand and foot with linen strips and with his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, unwrap him and let him go. So they remove the stone. Jesus prays out loud, not because he needs help, but because these people are listening and he wants them to understand what's happening. Then he calls out, Lazarus, come out. And Lazarus comes out alive, still wrapped in burial cloths, which seems like a wild image to me. But Jesus says, unwrap him and let him go. And that detail matters there because Jesus brings life, but the community helps remove what no longer belongs. The miracle isn't clean. It's powerful, but messy. Life shows up before everything looks normal again. So for our last reflection question, what might be coming back to life in you, even if it still feels unfinished or messy? Sometimes growth doesn't look impressive at first. It looks like showing up imperfectly, taking small steps forward, feeling alive again before everything feels free. This passage reminds us that new life doesn't always arrive polished. Sometimes it needs time. Sometimes it needs help. Sometimes it just needs patience. But this part of John 11, this middle section that we read today, shows us who Jesus is inside grief, not just after it. He doesn't rush the pain. He doesn't minimize it. He enters into it. He weeps, he stays, and then he speaks life. Faith here isn't pretending things didn't hurt. It's staying present long enough to see who Jesus is when they do. And if you're standing in front of something that feels sealed or final or beyond repair, this passage doesn't promise quick fixes, but it does show us a Jesus who steps into the mess, calls people by name, and brings life where everyone else thought the story was over. So if this episode helped you see this part of John 11 in a way you hadn't before, or helped you feel a little less alone in the waiting, or in this moment where you weren't sure which way to go with something that you feel like it was gone or unfixable, would you just share it with someone who might need that too? If you're new here, welcome. You are already part of this little community now. You can find all of our reflection questions, like I mentioned before, from today's episode, along with this week's verses and encouragement throughout the week over on Instagram at the Even If Project, also on TikTok. Those are the best places to stay connected and just to keep these conversations going. Next time, we're going to be staying still in John 11, but we'll move into the last part of it, what happens after the miracle. We'll look at how people respond when something undeniable happens, why not everyone celebrates, and how fear and control start shaping the next decisions. So bring your coffee, your Bible, an open heart, and whatever questions you're carrying, and I'll meet you right back here next week. I love you all, and I'll talk to you soon.